What happens when the very thing that made you successful?
Those two facts about my family kind of set the stage for who I became.
That was a difficult thing for a lady to climb that corporate ladder to get into that.
And at the time, I was so grateful because I was in so much pain and I didn't know how I was going to get to Nairobi from Tanzania.
You finally get some relief and you can think in your right mind about it.
You don't have to give up.
What happens when the very thing that made you successful stops working? For years, Nancy Deyo believed in hard work, discipline, endurance, and pushing through. Those qualities helped her become a Silicon Valley CEO. Then an injury when climbing Mount Kilimanjaro changed absolutely everything in her life. What followed was 15 years of chronic pain, misdiagnosis, opioid dependence, and rebuilding her identity from the ground up. Today, we're talking about resilience. We're talking about chronic pain and what happens when life no longer responds to effort the way it once did. Welcome to the SwagAbility Show, friends, where faith meets resilience and stories become light in dark places. I'm your host, Stephen Wagstaff, founder of SwagAbility, where our mission is simply to see you thriving in wherever life finds you. If you're new here, you would do the greatest honor for my wife and I by subscribing to the channel, and also whatever podcast you're listening on. If you would follow us, it would mean the world to us. You want to know a little bit more about what our nonprofit does in both Canada and the US, you can also head over to swagability.com and learn how we're helping individuals walk through dark times during their life. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Nancy, I really appreciate you taking some time. I know a couple different time zones, and but it means the world to me that you've made some time in your day for us to just chat about something that I think is so important and so little talked about today, and we want to shine a light on that. So thank you for this.
Stephen, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways I can go. I'm thinking Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm thinking about work, SEO. But before all that, I'm always curious about people's upbringing. Can you tell me and my listeners who Nancy Deyo, am I pronouncing that properly? Deyo?
You are. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, who's Nancy Deyo growing up? What were her ambitions? What were your high school hangouts enjoyed? What were things that just made you tick as a young lady?
Well, Stephen, you might be interested to know that I grew up in a family with a genius sister, 1 year older than me,
Okay.
and a genius father. And those two facts about my family kind of set the stage for who I became. And I still remember in elementary school going into my new class every year and always the teacher saying to me, "You're Kathy's sister. She was the brightest girl I've ever had in any of my classes in my
Older?
career."
Older sister, younger?
One
Older.
year older. So
Oh
she
my God.
preceded me. And that is really an impossible position to put a kid in.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as smart as she was, but I could work hard
Mm.
and I could study a lot and I could outlast and outrun and outwork most anybody.
You're very
So
athletic, right? As well?
I was athletic. I was a runner, and that was the way that I competed. Just do it longer, faster, better,
Mm.
do anything to persist and endure.
Huh.
That's who I became.
Wow. And that carried you through your elementary, um, kind of post-secondary choices of education. And I mean, being a C-suite back X amount of years ago, I mean, that was a difficult thing for a lady to climb that corporate
Mm.
ladder to get into that C-suite of names. So I'm interested to know, like, straight out of school into that position, how'd that come about?
Well, I paid my dues, most certainly. And it took me about 16 years to get to that point out of college. I got right into business and very quickly into Silicon Valley. And I thrived on the competition and the pace.
Yeah,
And I was a rare woman amongst a group of male leaders
yeah,
in a very male dominated culture, which is tricky in and of itself. But I used all those old habits that had served me well as a kid in my adulthood and fine tune them: discipline, control, metrics, pushing, outlasting. And it got me to what I considered a pinnacle at that point in my career at 37.
uh, I hope this is not too personal, but when you look back now, how much of your identity was tied to achievement?
Oh,
Oh.
all of it.
Is it?
It was ridiculous. I would say I was a CEO first and foremost, and that was the role that defined me.
Yeah,
And my role as a friend, a wife, a sister, a daughter, a community member, it was like this. It was way at the bottom.
yeah. Mm. And I guess I try and ask the same question. Was looking back, was your self-worth connected to productivity? Not just your identity, but your feeling of worth?
My
Same
feeling
thing?
of worth was tied to performance
Yeah,
and
yeah.
achieving. And anytime there was a blip, the self worth came unglued.
Okay. Yeah. So here you are, leader of a company. You know how your body works, you know how to study, you know how to work. You've done this thing. And I guess I call it the interruption. Somehow we end up at Mount Kilimanjaro, which is an amazing mountain when you start to look the history up. I'm a geek when I study on my guests, so I knew a lot of facts and stuff about it. But I mean, it's it's a very not so much technical, but the amount of effort that goes into the up and the down. Tell us a little bit about what Kilimanjaro stood for you, and why the trip. Was this a business success party, or how'd we get there?
I wish it were, and it was the exact opposite.
Oh,
I ended up running that company for several years, and we started to run out of money, as many startups in Silicon Valley do.
okay.
And I ended up having to sell the business to an arch rival, which I considered a palpable failure. Just the worst.
Okay.
And I went to Kilimanjaro not as an endurance test like a lot of athletes do, but I went there to prove something to myself and to everybody around me that I could succeed at something. And the crazy thing is, I really had no business going up the mountain because I trained hard for it and I injured my back in training. But I was an athlete, and so I would compartmentalize the pain and shove it
Yeah.
down. And I thought, I'm still going to do this. I might be really tired and sore at the other end, but I'm going for this. I need this. So I went
That
up the mountain anyway.
that was the
Unfortunately, they
mindset,
took,
wasn't it? I'm sorry to
pardon me?
interrupt. That was the mindset back then. Like, I think of whether it was hockey or like you could be punch drunk, but y- you went back out. There wasn't that mentality of check yourself because of what could happen down the road. And so I get how you could easily say, "Oh, I may have an injury, but I'm an athlete, so we're going to do it." It's just logical to me thinking back in the day. So you pushed through it and started your ascent.
I did. And the first day, I had to relinquish my pack because my spine was really bothering me. It couldn't bear the weight. The second day, by the end of the day, I'd have to go crash in my tent to recover enough by the next morning to keep going.
Mm.
As the days passed, a team was fashioned me a back brace out of duct tape and an inflatable pillow to hold me up, and still I kept going. And then if toward the fifth or sixth day, I couldn't sit. I couldn't bear the weight of my body on my spine. And so when I wasn't hiking, I had to be lying down. And at that point, I was at 16,000 feet. And I said to my husband, tomorrow's the hardest day. We're heading to the summit. And either I'm going to get really badly injured or I'm going to hurt somebody on the team who's trying to help me. I need to go down. You've trained for this. You really want this. You summit. I'll go down with a porter.
It was about
And
3,000 more feet left. Is that about
yes,
it? It's like so
yes,
close, right?
although it was the hardest part,
Okay.
but only 3,000 feet on a climb that, by the way, Stephen, isn't technical. There are no ropes and crampons, and
Yeah,
you're just walking a heavy ascent.
that's right.
7 days up, 2 days down was the way I was going.
Oh my goodness.
And so my husband went to summit, and I started to descend with two porters who didn't speak English. And unfortunately, my Swahili was no more than my name is and how are you. And about 2 hours later, I'd literally collapsed in the dirt and I'm face down and I'm thinking, my legs there is something wrong. My legs feel weird. I can't move them. They carried me to a tent. And I remember waking up at midnight after I'd collapsed and I was alone. They were in another tent. I was in a tiny one. And I was 41 years old and I just couldn't move my legs. And I know you appreciate this. They felt disconnected from my body. And when I tried to shift, it was like somebody had driven a steel rod through my spine. And I had two thoughts. I thought, number one, I was a doctor's daughter and I was
Oh,
self-diagnosing.
that's the worst position to be in.
It's the worst. And I thought, I'm probably bleeding out.
Yeah,
I'm probably dying and I'm going to end up with my name on a plaque like the other climbers who don't make it down.
yeah.
And I always thought that on my deathbed, my husband would be holding my hand, and here I am alone. And the
Oh,
second thought I had was more logical than that. And I thought, I have built my whole life around pushing harder, pushing through around endurance, and it's not working for me. It's causing me harm.
yeah.
And you might think that I would learn from that critical moment, that life altering moment, but it took me 15 years to learn what resilience really meant.
So yeah, we're gonna get there with
Yeah.
that. Um, so you're here to tell the story, so you've made it to the bottom. Um, what followed in those days or weeks or months after that, that started this fight for your life almost? You got to the bottom, and um, what was, for starters, were they able to pinpoint, okay, what's going on with your body, and here's how we're going to fix it? Or
Well, there are two things worth mentioning as I tell this part of the story.
mm,
The first is that they carried me piggyback down the mountain because I couldn't walk, and on what turned out to be a broken back and a smashed disc, they were running with me, and I was in shock. I wasn't recognizing what was happening. But when it was time to go for medical help, there was a famous mountaineer and filmmaker who was on Kilimanjaro filming an IMAX movie, and he gave my husband and I two Vicodin. And at the time, I was so grateful because I was in so much pain and I didn't know how I was going to get to Nairobi from Tanzania to get to a hospital. And I took it gratefully. And of course, I had no idea then that that was the beginning of using opioids to numb and kill the pain into what became quite a dependence/addiction. But to answer your question, I was very injured. Doctors on 3 continents, in Nairobi, in London, and finally in the United States, did MRIs, did x-rays, and basically came in the room with like a happy face and good news and said, you're going to be fine. The first doctor said you need bed rest. I stayed in a Nairobi hospital for a week. The second said you need PT, which I did relentlessly. And even my hometown doc in San Francisco walked into the room, and I'm lying in this hospital bed. My husband's on one side, there's a commode on the other because I can't walk to the bathroom of the
Yeah. You don't
town
make that
hospital
stuff up.
room.
Yeah.
And he said, I have great news. You're going to be okay. I'm going to prescribe OxyContin for you and a muscle relaxer, but there's nothing that needs to be surgically done to fix anything in your spine. And as bad went to worse, I started traveling to doctor's appointments by ambulance. And finally, further testing showed fractured vertebrae and a crushed disc that weren't available for the doctors to see on earlier films, and I had a spinal fusion.
Yeah.
I think the problem, though, Stephen, was that by the time they operated 6+ months later, I
Wow.
was incredibly dependent on OxyContin.
When do you think you realized that, for starters, with the problem of the pain and things, when did you realize that wasn't going to be just temporary? Was there a point where in your mind you're settled that this is not just today's pain and tomorrow goes away?
I think the first inkling was perhaps 4, 5, 6 weeks after my fusion, because the pain was significantly worse. And I understand postoperative pain. I think, sadly, many of us who have struggled with chronic pain and functional problems know this. But I went to see my doctor, my surgeon, who came into the room and said the surgery was flawless. And I'm lying down on his table after lying down in the waiting room because I cannot sit after surgery still. And when he said this to me, I said, my pain is off the charts. It's 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, and I need help. And he looked at me and he said, you seem really anxious. I think I need to refer you to psych. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know if I should trust my body now or what I'm being told. But I realized that the doctors were fixing what was structurally wrong, but my pain was spiraling. So I'm in trouble.
What does it do? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm not being interviewed. But what does it do to a person when nobody believes their pain? Because I think there's people listening in the caregiving position, the family position, and then there'll be those on the other side of the table going, they're talking my language. They
Mm.
understand. So there's a valley difference between the two peaks of where we are. But talk about what it did to you for nobody to believe that this wasn't just me whining over aches and stuff. This was pain that was debilitating, uh, disabling.
I think when you know something's really wrong, you know your body. We have to remember that we know our bodies better than anybody,
Hmm.
even our doctors. But when you're told that nothing is wrong, it creates this internal split, and your reality just gets really shaky. The ground is shaky beneath you, and you start to question yourself.
Yeah.
You question your instincts. You wonder if the messages that your body's sending your brain are real.
Mm.
It's so devastating because I think it's not just the pain, it's like you lose trust in yourself. And trying to rebuild that is really difficult.
Mm. What do you think people misunderstand when we use the word chronic pain? Because I think it's such an important subject to talk about. But
I think that pain is highly, highly individual.
mhm,
I think that the medical system's great with acute pain. I think when pain is persistent and everlasting, it creates a problem that can't be, quote, fixed necessarily. with an intervention, with a medication, I think the medical system and all of us don't know how to handle the thought of permanence. But honestly, pain is, I realized it wasn't the enemy, even though I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's information. And sadly, it's information a lot of us are taught to ignore.
Yeah. It is true. You were given Vicodin, and you were able to make it to the hospital, but explain to people what it's like to deal with a pain that is intolerable, is not seen by anyone, yet you finally get some relief and you can think in your right mind about it. When you first get that ability to not have pain, what's that feeling like?
Well, I remember so well feeling like any opioid would somehow blur what felt like jagged edges inside my body. And even after my surgery, I always felt like the metal was pushing out to exit my body,
Mm.
even though it wasn't. It was, 14 pieces of titanium in my spine, but it was in my spine, not in on my sides, and it felt like it was just exploding out of me. And opioids, for me, they dulled the edges. I could breathe. I felt like I held my breath for 15 years, which is so horrible because breathing's critical. It's so important in managing this. But it just calmed my whole nervous system because it wasn't just physical, it was neurological, it was mental, it was emotional.
It's all encompassing, isn't it? Like
It's
it
so
becomes,
huge that the only thing that we can do is turn inward. You can kind of retreat inside yourself because it's the only place you can look for solace because nothing externally helps. It vibrates too much.
and no one and no one can step into your body. And I often say to my wife, I'm being very open. I would never want to say this. I would love you to sit where I am for 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, even though it crossed my mind, because I don't think I could do that to anyone I loved because it, for me, and I'm being very personal, I had osteomyelitis. So I had an infection inside the
Mm.
hip bone that no one saw. Hip was structural, but inside, they found the hip was rotting from the inside
Oh
out.
my goodness.
So I fought with doctors that there was something wrong. I lost family over this. And so it's very personal to me, this whole thing about pain. And I do remember that I, laying in a hospital bed in tears, and I'm thinking that in the day and age we live in, there's got to be a better way to be able to do this. And that was the day that morphine or Dilaudid got introduced into my life. And for the first time, I truly had clarity, less anxiety, and I thought I can I can live like this if this is what it has to be.
Right.
But it doesn't stay there, and I think that's where the story's um, very unique in where it
I
takes
think
us.
the body just it's uncanny how fast it adapts.
Yes.
And when you're taking the opioid, and for me it went from Oxycontin to fentanyl.
Oh my land, that's a big jump.
Yeah, and you're taking it to feel better, but soon you're taking it so you don't feel worse.
That's right.
And you need, it's just overwhelming completely emotionally, physically, neurologically. I think that's what makes it so impossible when you want to get off of it and
Mhm.
why so many people relapse
Yeah.
who are attached to opioids.
I think that's a good warning to anyone listening that is dealing with pain. I mean, in hindsight, it's probably been 8 ago. So many changes take place in a body that you're never told up front, right? It's treating the symptom, but not the problem. And so if you wheel back the clock and say, how would I do it again? I don't know. I don't know. I just knew something was wrong and something needed to help me get through life. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
I still remember a big aha moment for me with opioids. My closest friend Kathleen came to visit me, and I thought I was in a good place where I could handle her energy because she was very calm as a human. But I was obsessing about, like, I would feel better if I had a new patch. I just wanted that patch. And I couldn't concentrate on anything she was saying. And finally, I said, would you do something for me? And she said, anything. And I said, go into my bathroom and get a new patch for me. And she hesitated. It just seemed an out of character request. And it was asking her to medicate to help me medicate. And she said, maybe I should get your husband. Maybe I should get Chris. I think he just drove in. And I thought, no, because I knew he would know. It was way too soon, like a day too soon,
Yeah.
to be slapping on another patch. And I looked up at her and she was crying.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, we both know. I mean, I'm an addict. I can't stop this because the pain doesn't stop.
I think we could park there for a minute and talk about what pain does to the person who's dealing with it and what pain does to loved ones around you. How did that unfold in your marriage, in your friendships, in work colleagues and things like that? I guess first of all, how did it unfold with you and accepting it? And then how did it kind of unpack with other people around you in life?
It took me 10 years into it to try to accept it. And that's a hard word for me, but I remember I was in a particularly low point. I'd gone to the Mayo Clinic for a drug detox and rehab program, and I was just feeling like there was no way out. And my psychotherapist kept saying to me, there's something called the new normal.
I hate that word.
And I said, I hate the new normal. I hate it. It's my horizontal, monochromatic, horrible, isolated life. And she said, you don't have to give up. You just have to give in a little. You got to stop fighting yourself. And I sat with that. Part of me still hated it. But it took me some time to realize that maybe I needed to adjust to the way things are and focus on what I could do. But to answer the question about my relationships, my marriage completely changed. And my husband was the most steady, consistent, non-judgmental, supportive, and health advocate you could imagine, because I could not advocate for
What's his
myself.
name? Because I
His name
think
is Chris.
Chris deserves recognition, just as my
Thank
wife
you.
Lee as well does.
I think a lot of men might have gone through something like this and maybe 10 years in said, I love you, but when we took our vows, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah,
Because you can't imagine what it might be like until it happens. And then you have a choice to make.
because pain checks you out of life, and then adding a mask to mask the pain checks you out of life, but sometimes out of like everyday reality of what to do. And so those things where you're picking up the slack even a little bit become almost a full load for the person around. And that's why we're so adamant about loving on caregivers at SwagAbility, because I think not professional, although they're wonderful people, but the family caregiver
Yeah.
themselves is is an epidemic of people burnt out that need to be loved upon and heard. But
That couldn't be truer in my situation. I think, I couldn't be a wife. I
yeah,
couldn't love. I couldn't listen. I couldn't participate. Couldn't go out. I couldn't do anything.
yeah,
And I remember Chris telling me when I was working on the memoir that I had been writing,
yeah.
he said, I didn't just lose my wife, I lost you. I mean, he lost everything and gave up everything
Well,
to try to see me through it. And
man.
something that we both weren't sure had an ending.
Has he ever told his side of walking through? Because I think, you know, I think it's, I think it would be a brilliant thing to hear from caregivers. I only mention that because when my wife went through her cancer surgeries, I was the one being in bed all the time. I was used to being the patient. I was okay with that. When I became the caregiver, even though brief as it was the most difficult thing because I couldn't fix her. I couldn't fix a thing. And now I realize I'm at 27 years of marriage and I realize what love really is. It's, uh, yeah, it's an amazing thing when someone
Yeah,
loves
I
you to
think
eyes.
when I was so sick that he had to shower me off and wash me and
Yes.
do all of those things, I thought, okay, so maybe this is what love looks like. It's
Yeah.
not what I thought. It's not, you know, passion and spontaneity and all those beautiful things that might be in your marriage, but it's this really deep trust and bond created through this shared trauma.
That you didn't think, at least I didn't, till about 70 or 80. You know what I mean? Not at 40, not at 48,
Yeah,
not at
yeah,
whatever, right? So is that new normal? I
yeah,
hated hearing it in COVID, but I hated hearing it in my life as well because, like you, I was used to just pushing through. But when pushing through doesn't work anymore, hey,
hmm
what's the answer?
hmm
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I will add just quickly that
please.
I lost my friends too,
Yeah, we're
and
there.
all but three vanished when I got sick.
Yes,
Even one of my closest friends who I used to talk to every Sunday, just the call stopped coming after the initial accident and the what can I do? Oh my God, this is so horrible. I think it's very, very hard. And, some friendships are unconditional,
yes,
but a lot aren't.
yeah. It's very sad for that, but it's true. And I don't think you and I mean, if it's common between you and I would hazard a guess to think that other people in the same position are dealing with the same thing, loneliness, people abandoning. And then what are you left with? You're just left with you and your mind to try and figure this thing out. Um, this question's kind of been floating in my head while we've been talking, but what do you wish doctors or medical personnel understood about patients living with invisible pain? Because to me, sometimes there's so much guilt attached to it that you need to convince someone that this is my issue. Um, but it's so horrible, I feel.
I guess the first thing is I don't wish it on them because I don't wish it
No,
on anybody.
true.
I wish that they had more
Mhm.
genuine empathy, more ability to put themselves into your shoes, which is quite difficult and pretty impossible for most people.
For sure.
I wish they listened longer.
Mhm.
And they are only as good as the information that we give them. So I know that in some senses it's on us too.
And they've heard it numerous times over before we tell our story,
So
right?
true.
Um, but which is one of the things I was thinking of if anyone in the medical field is listening. And there are some great doctors and nurses out there.
Absolutely.
But then there's some that I say I can tell within 5 minutes in a room who's there for a paycheck and who's there because they love their job and what they signed up for. Um, anyway,
Right.
I don't want to park there too long. Um, Identity collapse. When the CEO disappeared, who did you find was left?
Chronic pain patient, period, full stop, that's it. You
Yeah.
know, all those other identities that lurked beneath the CEO high achieving surface, they were gone too. So, no community member, no wife, no friend, no sister, no daughter. My
Did you
own parents were aging,
mm,
and I should have been taking care of them, and they were trying to take care of me.
did you grieve the old Nancy?
Oh, for so long, I fought to get her back. And part of the reason I pushed so hard was if I only push, I can get back to where I was. So here's where I was, and this was the fight. And it was an undulating series of violent, fierce setbacks. And
Mm,
every time I'd feel inkling of better, I'd push hard because maybe I can get back to who I was. I just wanted my life back.
amen. Yeah. Um, Today, how do you separate your value from productivity?
Well, I would be dishonest if I said I didn't still struggle with it because I think it's such an ingrained character trait in me that to say I've let it go would probably not be truthful.
I mean,
I think that as I started to regain strength, you know, toward the tail end of those 15 years, I think some of that old endurance and push starts to come back, and I need to listen really, really closely to my body because I've learned that it's going to tell me the truth,
mm,
and the signals that it's sending to my brain are being sent there for a reason, and that I need to trust and pay attention to them. I still push, but I try to balance that a
mm.
little bit better than I used to.
Maybe let me flip the question around
Please.
a little bit differently and maybe ask it this way. What part of yourself did you discover only because of this journey?
I discovered a very contemplative part
Hmm,
that thinks deeply. I discovered a very compassionate part that feels everything.
hmm,
I discovered a part that's a better friend, a better wife, because I knew what I needed. And I think I discovered that I'm more flexible than I thought. If you had asked me about being flexible 15 years ago, I would have said, I hate flexibility. I don't want to be flexible.
yeah, it is what it is. Were you ever angry at your body
Um,
or at?
That's such a good question. I was not an angry person,
Mhm,
but I will say that it's probably because I buried it and it took its toll physically on me.
yeah,
I'm sure I was angry because my body was something that used to perform. And when it's letting you down, it makes you mad.
mm,
But my emotions manifested more as like anxiety and like catastrophizing my life is over.
mm, yeah. Um, what does resilience now look like for you after kind of started, sat with it for a bit, Lord willing, come out the other end of it, and in hindsight now, asking, what does resilience really mean to you and look like in your life?
It used to mean come back, bounce back,
Yep.
endure at all costs.
Hmm.
And it doesn't and can't mean that for me now.
No.
It means navigating the limits of what's possible inside my body
Hmm.
It means letting go of any aspiration to be who I was
Mm.
because I'm very different. It means listening really hard to every message, every tweak that my body gives me so that I can frame it in the right way. And it means really relentlessly, and I shouldn't use that word because it implies that I'm still pushing,
Yeah.
but relentlessly focusing on the things that I can still do
Yes.
and do well and just letting go of that stuff. There's a lot I can't control.
But there's so much left. I'm sure I'm not the only one. This is, I think it's a list for you too. Even amid what I can't do, I mean, grieve the 19-year-old who broke his neck. There's so much I can do, and I think for me, I think that's the part that frustrates me when I see others, maybe in my condition or even less my what it wouldn't matter of not doing because there is the ability to thrive in life. Um, I, at least I feel that. Um, did you come to that conclusion for you?
I absolutely did. And it is the only thing that got me back out in the world, out of my bedroom and out of my
Yeah.
bed.
How many hours were you spending? I mean, at your lowest point in a house, not going outside, type of thing.
24.
Yeah.
I mean, because I couldn't
Yes.
sit more than a couple minutes at a time, sometimes I would try to quickly eat a meal so I could digest better, but I was horizontal. That was my life. And so, because society, as so many people who are differently able, society doesn't know what to do with a lot of people.
No.
They did not know what to do with me.
No.
What do you do with somebody who can't sit?
It's true. I mean, whether that's an open wound or whatever like that, but you're right. We're so used to understanding. You go to school, you sit in a chair, you listen. Uh, but it's to me, it's about we have these stigma. We have these defined set principles that this is just how it is because society says so. But why? Why is it wrong for me to recline my wheelchair back because I can't sit anymore, but still be in a seminar listening or whatever like that? I think it just
Absolutely.
takes boldness, doesn't it? And I think this is what happened because if I'm not mistaken, I think I read that you went back to school after this. Did you not?
I did. I had to get back out of the house. I was determined not to spend the rest of my life in my bed.
Mm,
And my mind was working fine. It was my body that had to be horizontal. So I went to
yes.
graduate school lying on an army cot.
Yeah. Can we talk briefly about that experience? Because that will
Yeah.
be not only unique for you, but I'm assuming going back to, postgraduate school, to have someone laying down in the classroom, you're thinking, in this day and age, really? How'd that go?
Well, I still remember the first day of orientation for grad school, and I was twice the age of everybody in
Oh,
my
right.
cohort.
On top of this.
On top of this, I was 50 and they were, 20 something. And I was lying on my cot and I was so nervous. I was just freaking out. Like, how am I going to be? Will they understand me? Will I be accepted? How is this going to possibly work? And it was my turn to introduce myself. And I remember I like tried to prop myself up on my elbow so I would elevate my head more to the level of the humans who were sitting down at the tables. And I said, "Hey, I'm Nancy, and I had an accident on Mount Kilimanjaro, and I'm going to be the way you see me here lying down in class. And I want you to know that I'm good with it so you can be too." And I was so terrified. But I think my inclination was I have to make everybody feel comfortable. I got
Yes.
to like diffuse this or I'm never going to survive it.
Yeah. That's that's very good.
Mm,
Um, isn't it amazing what our bodies, what our minds allow us to do when we don't hold them back, when we're
mm.
not afraid of that? Maybe
Well,
we're,
I was going to say, I think what my fellow students taught me
Mhm.
was that I wasn't defined by this because
No,
that's who I thought I was. I thought I was a person with chronic pain who had to lie down.
no.
That's it. And I remember them fighting with me one day when we did a study on refugee identity in one of my classes. And the professor said, let's just take a moment. I want you to think about who you are and who you're not. And that was easy for me to write. You know, I used to be a CEO, an athlete, a wife, and now I'm a chronic pain patient, and society isn't ready for me. And I'm starting to ramble, and they started to cut me off. That is not how we see you. You have things that are wonderful to contribute. You just happen to do it lying down. And I thought, oh my God, they don't
Yeah.
even see me this way. My classmates who I lie down next to every day, that was pretty that was a pretty strong epiphany for me.
If only the world could grasp what those those students around you, because um, there's a friend of mine has a great saying: being uh, having a disability doesn't mean you don't does having a disability isn't inability. Just because someone has a disability doesn't mean there's there's no inability to do something. And I champion that thought so much. There's Our mind is what holds us back in so many different times, and I guess
For sure.
culture in some ways. Yeah. So through grad school, um, uh, what was the next chapter before the book's written, which we'll get to here as
Yeah.
we close it out? And I really appreciate your patience with my
Oh
time.
my God,
And
I'm
like,
so happy to talk about this. Well,
yeah,
after grad school,
please,
I realized I could be in the world lying down, and I
yeah,
thought maybe I can work again. It had been so many years,
yeah,
but my brain wanted to work, and I had been studying international development and women and girls, and I really wanted to lift other people up. And so I thought maybe if I could lie down on an airplane by buying 3 coach seats, I could start to I could leave San Francisco again for the first time in 15 years.
because
And
flying was unable to be in a seated
I,
position.
I couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I started to do that. And, I got a lot of flack from business people wanting my ass seat and,
I bet.
flight attendants thinking I was just lazy. And
Yeah,
I mean, it's appalling what you'll get.
yeah,
But my skin was a little tougher by then, I think, after grad
okay,
school,
yeah,
and I felt like I had a right to be in those spaces,
yes,
and it got me back into the world in a more serious way. But the crazy thing is, by doing that, I think I had a body that was just so fiercely deconditioned by all the years lying down. We don't recognize, and I think the doctors weren't warning me about what would happen to my muscles
yes,
if I
atrophy.
wasn't upright. But I think that process of going into the classroom and setting up the cot and getting to the airplane to lie down, I slowly started to gain some strength,
Yes, yes.
which is critical for all of us.
Was there at any point that you were okay or realized that this truly had become a disability? Were you ever comfortable with that word disability? Did it ever cross your mind?
It always crossed my mind. And I think that's why in that grad school peace and conflict class, I said, I have chronic pain and I'm disabled. I can't sit. So that was the way I defined myself, chronic pain and disability. You know,
Yeah.
yes.
Talk to the person that's listening to this right now. They're an able bodied individual and they misunderstood what invisible suffering is like. Um, what's one or two, you don't even have to get to three, what's one or two things you would want them to know about not just yourself and your situation, but generally people that are in this state of dealing with pain or anything that's behind? When the tests say everything's good, but the body says no, it's not something wrong. Um, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Speak to those people for a minute.
I would want people to know that we are, we're all struggling, we're all suffering. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean I'm not incapacitated by it. Whatever you're seeing, there's so much underneath that I can't even put into language for you.
Mhm.
It's so all consuming and fierce that it's carrying me over. I think I would tell them also that I'm lonely. I still need human connection, but it's really hard for me to do that because even sometimes being touched sends a pain signal to my brain.
Mhm.
But don't stop showing up in any way you can.
That's right. Yeah, so true. Um, your husband, Chris, and my wife, Julie, amazing people, but how can families, I'm just trying to think, what can we get out so people better understand? What can they get out of this time we're discussing? But how can families better support someone living with chronic pain?
I think the first thing that I really needed was that advocate by my side in those doctor's visits when you have 15 minutes to tell your whole story.
Yeah.
I needed an advocate. My husband Chris had to go to appointments on my in my on my behalf because I couldn't get into the car.
Mhm.
I think by playing this role and championing what you need, they will need to better understand what we're experiencing. So just listen. Sometimes we just need to say stuff out loud,
Yeah,
no matter how crazy it sounds.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And know that if we're quiet or turned inward, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this, but for the people listening, can purpose survive pain?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
I think it can.
Mhm.
You can be lost in it
Yeah.
for some
15
time.
years. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, what do you think this whole series chapter of your life with chronic pain taught you about yourself that success never ever could have?
Well, it certainly taught me that success does not define us. It taught me what matters about life and that it can be a much smaller, gentler life that's a wonderful life.
Mhm.
It doesn't make it less. It taught me who matters in a huge way. The people that really matter are the ones who stick.
Yeah. All right, let's land this plane here. Um, what would you tell someone exhausted right now from fighting? They're at the beginning stages of where we were and they're not getting answers. What would you champion that person or advise that person, even though we don't offer medical advice on this channel? What would you want them to know? That's exhausted in their fighting.
I would say make sure you have an advocate if you feel that you can't do that alone.
Yes.
Connect with other humans because no matter how inhuman you're feeling, it's the connectedness that makes us the people that we are. I'd say just because you're having a terrible period
Mhm.
doesn't mean this is permanent
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean that you failed.
Yeah. storms don't last forever. That's kind of been the reason why SwagAbility exists. And I'll ask you before I give the outro, but what does thriving where life finds you mean to Nancy Deyo? The tagline for SwagAbility: thrive where life
Mm,
finds you. What's that mean to you?
it means paying it forward for me. It
Yeah.
means taking all that pain and all that angst and all those experiences and being as honest and as vulnerable as I can in sharing them out, because somebody out there is going to feel seen or heard, or maybe they're going to pick up one tiny thing that they could try that might give them a bit of relief.
Nancy Deyo standing at the bottom of Kilimanjaro today. What would you tell Nancy Deyo of 2026 at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro today?
I love that because I'm going back to Tanzania this summer.
I'm like, this would be the perfect ending to a sort of Hollywood movie. And here I am giving the big old YouTube moment here, but that's amazing. I did not know that.
I'm going back and I'll be in the same little coffee plantation inn that I was in
Awesome.
after I got carried down the mountain,
Cool.
in the same area. And I would say to her, you don't have to climb this.
Yes.
You don't
That's what
have
I wanted to
anything
hear.
to prove. And I have no intention of climbing that mountain.
That's what I was also hoping to hear. But going back to it, I mean, there's just the significance that I don't need to climb that to be, Steve Wagstaff, or I don't thrive where life find. I don't need to go there to solve that, but I'm okay with coming back here. It was the same, I think, for me with getting back into the water or even going back to my accident site.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't defeat me. It was still water on a sandbar that I didn't see, but it has changed me, but it did for some time, but no longer define me. That
I
doesn't.
think the people that haven't been through experiences like this
Mhm.
want me to go climb the mountain again.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
But I'm not going to.
No, no, there's no Hollywood film coming with you
Yeah,
being
there's
carried
no
up and down.
reason.
No, no, because I don't want to steal the words, you're comfortable in your skin and you're
Yeah.
comfortable in your situation. Maybe not comfortable, that's a dumb word, but you're accepting of where you are and knowing that you still have purpose and productivity to live for. Um, Tell us about the memoir that Chris wish you would have burnt. I don't know if that's true, but
Actually, the name of the memoir is Perilous Ascent.
okay,
And, it's not just about Kilimanjaro, of course, although that
no,
opens the book, but it's about the
fabulous title.
craziness of climbing back to life.
Yes, yeah.
Um, Chris didn't want me to write the book.
Oh, really? Okay,
It was really painful for him because he was my memory in many cases because I was so numbed out by opioids.
yeah,
And the details that make this thing visceral for other people are the ones I need to share.
yeah.
And it was very hard for him. He's a look forward, don't look back kind of guy. And I'm look back, find the meaning, move forward.
Amen to that.
Mm.
I have always said, like, when life gets flipped upside down and you cannot see what life holds for you today, and you absolutely can't look forward because you don't think there's any tomorrow. To me, I look back to see for me, the faithfulness of my God and the faithfulness of how I've recovered in other scenarios. And that gives me that settled
Mm.
confidence that this isn't going to last forever. And who can I help because of this? Um, and that's not anything special. I just think that's a reframed word, resilience, in a different way.
Touche.
Where can people be
Agree.
able to get your book when it does drop? I understand you're looking for a publisher and that. Do you have an expected date for when it might drop?
I'm hoping to do something in the next 12 months. And in the meantime, I'm obviously still writing because it's
Yeah.
part of who I am.
Oh,
So
on
I have
Substack, right?
pardon me?
You're on Substack, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. I am. I have a publication called Life Inside Pain where I talk about what's real for people in particular who are struggling with illness or loss or a disruption when pushing through isn't working.
Yeah.
And they can find me at Nancy Deyo, DEYO.substack.com.
Yeah. I'll have that in the show notes because
Thanks.
that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I was just so grateful. It was like finding a twin sister. I mean, I haven't climbed a mountain. I dove into a river, but um, your language was what I needed to hear.
Mm,
And I just look forward for what God has for me and for you. Our stories aren't done being
yeah.
written yet. They can get a hold of you on Substack. I don't know if you answer social media or anything like that. It would be difficult, but best way to find out what's going on is at your Substack.
Substack, I have a website at nancydeyo.com. I'm
Okay, good.
on, and people can write to me there, which
You
I
don't
would
mind
so
that?
welcome.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think even making a comment, whether it's on this video or just in general, being able to connect with someone that someone
Yeah.
goes, aha, wait, there's one more out there that I haven't been able to find up until this time. So thank you for being one extra friend for Swagability to say, look, don't talk to me as well. There's Nancy will tell you all about it as well. So I think the world needs more people that are able to be 100% honest in areas where we really struggled, but we had a comeback story. And I think if people thought through resilience in light of that, I think the world would be a better place.
Here, here.
Thank you, Nancy, for not only sharing your story, your wisdom, uh, your hard-earned perspective, um, and to everyone listening, thank you for spending part of your day with us. If today's conversation has encouraged you, challenged you, or helped you see adversity through a different lens, would you do us the greatest honor? Would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? Or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast, would you follow us? And if you want to learn more about why swagability exists, it's so people can thrive where life finds them. Head on over to our website, swagability.com. There you can find out a little bit about my story, my wife and I, and what we're doing in the US and Canada in terms of helping people walk through the darkest times of their life. Remember, friends, your story has power and your life still has purpose. So stay faithful, keep moving forward, and remember, thrive wherever life finds you. Swags. Hence.